recession? Are we in a recession?
I'll say this about the economy, which is that we're in the process, this government's been in the process of laying the foundations for a stronger, more resilient, more independent Canadian economy. That process is settling in during that time as we make major investments, major changes to how the government operates, how we do major projects, how we have new trade agreements with other countries. It's always difficult. I should always remember to go up the stairs more slowly or get in better shape. As we do all that, the data is going to be uneven, and we see some weakness, in part because of clear decisions by the government. So we have taken back control of immigration. That's meant the population growth has flattened. In fact, it's slowed, or it's been negative for the last 2 quarters. We have reined in government spending, so it had been growing close to 10%. It's growing less than 2% now. So that's also something that weighs on. There's some other choppiness in terms of how investment is happening. But we're also seeing at the same time the foundations coming into place, settling in for that stronger, more resilient economy. So for example, if you look at business investment, particularly in machinery and equipment, in R&D, in intellectual property, that's actually up quite sharply in the last couple of quarters, including the most recent quarter. If you look at household incomes, they are now growing strongly. They continue to grow faster than the rate of inflation. There's more to be done without question, but they're moving in the right direction. So you have these cross currents as the economy is being fundamentally transformed. We're going to continue to work. We're making progress, but there's more to be done.
Où est-ce que ça bloque avec Washington en ce moment? Parce que M. Leblanc s'en va à Washington aujourd'hui. Où est-ce que ça bloque en ce moment avec Washington?
Well, il y a plusieurs. Pas vous, OK. Il y a plusieurs enjeux. Monsieur Leblanc et la négociatrice en chef, Mme Charette, avons une bonne discussion la semaine dernière avec Monsieur l'ambassadeur Greer. Il est le négociateur en chef pour les États-Unis. Il y a une réunion actuelle à Washington aujourd'hui. Alors, il y a plusieurs enjeux. Il y a une série d'enjeux américains par rapport au Canada, des enjeux techniques.
Quoi, par exemple?
Il y a des exemples, il y en a plusieurs, il y a une trentaine d'enjeux, il y a 60 enjeux américains avec le Mexique, par exemple. Alors, on fait de progrès avec quelques-uns de ces enjeux. Pour nous, les grands enjeux concernent les grandes industries qui sont affectées par les tarifs américains stratégiques, c'est-à-dire, c'est une phrase américaine, sur l'acier, l'aluminium, l'automobile et les produits forestiers. Alors, on essaie de trouver un nouveau partenariat avec les États-Unis dans les domaines stratégiques.
Mais le fait que, par exemple, le fait que les Américains disent on voudrait que 50% du contenu des autos soit aux États-Unis, là, vous, est-ce que vous êtes d'accord avec ça?
C'est une discussion. C'est plus difficile, c'est bien plus difficile pour les Mexicains. Par exemple, le moyen maintenant de contenu dans le domaine des automobiles canadiens par rapport aux États-Unis, c'est environ 50%. Ici au Canada, mais ça c'est le moyen. Alors il y a une variation. In English, and then I'm going. Pardon me. Yes. So in terms of the discussions with the U.S., there's a series of issues, technical issues that they have with Mexico, they have with us, which is why there's a bifurcated discussion. So 30 issues or so with us, more than almost 60, I think, with Mexico at current count. And so we're working through a series of those issues. They're of varying technicality, if I can put them, and some of them are provincial. But for us, there's the more fundamental structural issues, as people know, which relate to the so-called strategic sectors. That's the American term, the 232 tariffs that are on automobiles, on steel, aluminum, forest products particularly. And there we're looking to determine whether there's a possibility of a new partnership there. And the question, which refers to public comments of the U.S. About U.S. content in Mexico. So where, in automobiles, and where the negotiations have been, or where the agreement has been around North American continent. So you see the shift in U.S. focus there. And my response was just pointing out that the 50% U.S. content, which has been floated, is actually the average level of Canadian exports. Now, that's an average, and there's a range around those averages, so I'm not endorsing that in any way, but it gives you a sense. It's a much bigger issue given the structure of Mexico.
Il y a une grande ce sera une grande annonce cet après-midi avec Madame la Première ministre du Québec. Oui, un grand investissement dans plusieurs domaines, près de 10 milliards de dollars d'investissement fédéral au Québec. C'est une grande journée.
Qu'est-ce qui fait débloquer?
Nous avons débloqué.
Is anti-Semitism, sir?
Transport collectif, qu'est-ce que vous dites aux gens de Québec qui n'en veulent pas de tramway?
Je pense que je vais m'en remettre au ministre responsable.
Non, mais qu'est-ce que vous en pensez, vous, de ces gens de Québec qui disent non, mais on n'en veut pas d'argent du fédéral, on n'en veut pas de tramway?
J'en ai assez de débats à Gatineau.
Minister, the topic of yesterday was anti-Semitism. What's driving anti-Semitism in Canada?
I'm not sure I thought enough about that this morning to speak on it. I thought the Prime Minister spoke very eloquently about it, and anti-Semitism is a scourge that we must always be vigilant and fight against.
Do you think Omar Gabra is qualified to deal with the
Le
issue?
Bloc québécois dépose aujourd'hui un projet de loi pour abroger la loi sur la clarté. Ouais. Quelle est votre position? Est-ce que ça devrait être abrogé, oui ou non?
Ben, je pense que le Bloc devra répondre d'entrée de jeu comment eux ils se proposent de répondre à l'arrêté de la Cour suprême, justement, qui a un peu fait la carte routière pour la loi sur la clarté.
What are you going to do on Billy Bishop, the Doug Ford's plan? What's going on with that? Are you going to allow the runway to be extended?
We're going to allow the legislative procedure to play out in Ontario. Then
They have a majority. That bill is going to be passed. What are you going to do?
there's a regulatory process that must follow. Then we will sit down with our new partners at the tripartite table and talk about the way
Is the
forward.
government going to be looking to fast-track the legislation that it signaled it plans to introduce quite quickly after the June 8th deadline for those regulatory reforms?
For which
For the discussion papers on the regulatory project approvals, there's legislation that the ministers have signaled will be introduced quite quickly.
The consultation periods are still open on at least two of those documents, and we'll let that
But
play
is the
out.
government's intention to fast-track it as it did C5?
We'll let the consultation processes play out on those discussions.
But we don't. But the government signaled from the get-go that it wanted to pass C5 quickly. Is it the same? Is this not the same for these?
Look, there are a number of things that the government laid out in those papers that it seeks to address. We're hearing from interested parties on those issues.
Les données statistiques Canada qui correspondent à des définitions de récession technique. On vous entend en Chambre dire nous, on a le meilleur plan pour réagir à la situation économique, mais est-ce qu'il y a besoin d'ajustement de ce plan-là en regard des nouvelles données?
Je pense qu'assurer la croissance, la création d'emplois, d'opportunités au Canada, former la main-d'œuvre, faire en sorte que nous pouvons réaliser d'importants projets, je pense que c'est précisément le bon plan.
What do you think of the NDP trying to table legislation to ban floor crossing?
I'm reminded of Mr. Harper. Yep, thank you.
What do you think?
Anti-Semitism in Canadian society.
Canada's a tolerant country and we need to do better. As Prime Minister Carney is setting an example for all of us, including parliamentarians, people in elected office, but also leaders in communities and civil society. I think we all need to strive to ensure that not only are we a more tolerant society, but we respect and understand each other more.
Conservative Liberal.
Est-ce que vous êtes ouverte à la répartition?
Asking about your work to help combat anti-Semitism. I think I saw the reaction from the CIGA was the speech was great, important words, but really another committee. I mean, is it sufficient?
Well, I think what we've seen over the last few years is an increase in anti-Semitism and hate that's alarming. And entirely unacceptable. We've also seen the polarization that hate in our country has created and continuing to foment. If the standard of a new committee is to eradicate all this, then it will be stillborn. But certainly we can do some work to make sure that we are coming together as a country and that we are addressing these issues in an honest and open way. First is acknowledging that this type of hate exists and it's increased, and that we're failing the people that we are supposed to be protecting. Second is taking the next steps, including putting forward a number of laws to address hate, including criminal ones that will punish people quite severely for engaging in it. And I think that's an important step, but also making investments in preventing it in the first place. A lot of laws deal with harm once they've occurred. Dealing with it before it happens is important. So part of this committee is to talk in a way that is open and frank and to tackle issues with a group of people that have spent a good deal of their career either being subject to various forms of hate or have been incredible advocates in the field. So coming together in a way that isn't polarizing, I think, is the first step. But let's make sure that the standard for this committee isn't one that is perfection, because we'd be naive to think that we can eradicate this overnight.
There are people on that committee, though. There are people on that committee, and I'm thinking of one who's a lawyer in Alberta, for example, who have said that the encampments on college campuses were not anti-Semitism. The Jewish community feels those places were a place that fomented anti-Semitism. How are you going to arrive at a solution?
Well, look, Stephanie, I'm not going to parse through the biographies of individual members. The reality is, without defending any particular point of view, is that lawyers are entitled and obligated to do their jobs. I think dialogue is a good start.
Isn't social media, is now coming this month? And,
I'd said before, you guys will be the first to know.
Is it going to be a chat box? Like, is it part of the AI strategy?
Do you want to come in there and debate it with us?
Yes.
You got to get elected first, and then you got to get nominated. It's a privilege to serve as a member of cabinet. No, it's just not ready to discuss it.
I just want to know what you mean when you say you're reviewing it, because the government is.
I mean, I'm looking at it, reading it.
You don't have the authority to overrule the CRTC, so what is it?
Well, I wouldn't presume my intentions. Ultimately, I am reviewing it. We are taking a look at it as a government. I think we owe it to the people that it touches and concerns, whether domestic and foreign, to take a sober look at it. Non, mais ils ont le droit de le présenter comme projet de loi, c'est sûr.
Qu'est-ce que c'est une majorité claire? Parce que fondamentalement, c'est ça la question. Si, par exemple, au Québec, il y avait un référendum, est-ce que...
Que je débatte avec vous maintenant?
Oui, absolument. Est-ce que... Puis la question, c'est est-ce que vous voulez, oui ou non, que le Québec se sépare?
Je veux pas que le Québec se sépare.
Je sais que vous voulez pas que le Québec se sépare, mais pour vous, c'est quoi une majorité claire? Parce
Moi,
que...
je vous inviterais à lire l'arrêt de la Cour suprême.
Ben, parce qu'on dit 50%. M. Carney a dit 50-50 Canada.
Assurer la croissance de création d'emplois de l'opportunité au Canada, former la main-d'œuvre, faire en sorte que nous pouvons réaliser d'importants projets. Je pense que c'est
The Prime Minister speaking out against it clearly yesterday is part of what helps. Thanks.
Minister Solomon, how can you increase Canadians' trust in AI?
Well, I'm looking forward to releasing the strategy this week. And it'll be on, as the Prime Minister said, it'll be this week. Thanks for asking. It'll be lots on trust, lots on empowering workers, lots on building Canada. You'll see the details later this week.
But how will you increase Canadians' trust is very low compared to other countries. How will you increase it?
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the strategy. There's lots of ways that we will make sure that we're protecting Canadians' privacy, their data, children, making sure Canadians are empowered to build the trust. Trust, absolutely vital. Absolutely vital.
Have you opened to mandatory reporting thresholds?
In terms of the AI policy, are you concerned that we will have GDP growth but a huge amount of job losses? And what should the regulations have to guard against something like that?
Look, I think my job is to make sure that Canadians are prepared for any technological changes, any economic changes, by ensuring that what we offer to employees, as well as to affected employees, supports them in these transitions.
Do you think Canadians are...
With Alto, sir, the United Councils of Prescott and Glengarry are saying they don't want to have Alto to do any surveying on their land. That's a huge swath of space between Ottawa and the river. And how can a train get through if the United Counties of Prescott and Glengarry don't want Alto there?
We'll continue. I've been the path and the alignment. We'll continue listening to the folks who live there.
That your government is hoping to get past this before the parliament rises?
Well, if I told you that, then the opposition would not want to pass anything. So we'll keep working with them and try and pass a number of pieces of important legislation.
Sir, on mythos, are we getting access to mythos?
Yes. Yeah, I can confirm that the Canadian government is part now of Project Glasswing, which allows companies to have access to Mythos. So we do have access. We are part of Project Glasswing. I'll confirm that. And through the Canadian Cybersecurity Centre, we have access to Mythos now. So it's a very important step for Canadians and for our government to make sure that we have access and we can protect our institutions and our country.
So will we test what happens next in terms of, do certain departments get to test it against their systems? What happens now?
So I want to give you, I can't give you the details of who's got access to it. Needless to say, the government's part of Project Glasswing, which gives us access. Canadian Cybersecurity Centre has the access, so that's a really vital step. And I'm not going to give you the names of how that will roll out, but needless to say, a very important step to increase our access and to make sure that Canadian systems are protected.
So we'll be testing vulnerabilities within our systems?
Yeah, part of what Project Glasswing is all about is testing the systems and the patchwork that can happen, the patching that happens. So that's a really important step.
Can I ask you about your G7 meeting last week? You signed an agreement that had to do with taking a common approach among G7 countries on things like age verification for platforms. What practical implication does this have for Canada for example, our online harms bill, given that Marc Miller's office referred me to you?
I will say I'm working very closely with Minister Miller, Justice Minister, and we've said that we will have legislation, comprehensive legislation, that will make sure that we're protecting children, first and foremost, children, our Canadians' privacy and Canadians' data. Really important step with the forthcoming AI strategy, yes, coming this week, as the Prime Minister said, and that protection is a very vital step. So that working with G7, you see around the world, and we've said this all along, we are going to make sure that children are protected and Canadians' data and privacy.
Can the privacy legislation and the AI legislation wait till the fall? Can that legislation wait till the fall, or do we need to see it imminently?
Well, we'll, in due course, you're going to see it, but I would just say it's a really important element of building the trust for the AI strategy and for other things. We got to protect Canadians first and foremost.
Did Mythos hold up any of this rollout?